Today, I'm heading out on my motorbike once again. And that brings me to the topic I want to talk about today. Why do so many Vietnamese people own motorbikes? Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My nickname is Peter. I'm a Vietnamese man in my 40s. To be honest, living in Vietnam, riding a motorbike is such a normal part of everyday life that I rarely stop to think about it. But whenever I watch videos made by foreigners visiting Vietnam, I notice that there's one thing that often surprises them. Not the buildings, not the food, but the motorbikes. They seem to be everywhere. According to official statistics, Vietnam has more than 77 million registered motorbikes, while the country's population is around 100 million people. That means there are roughly 770 motorbikes for every 1,000 people. It might even be one of the highest motorbike ownership rates in the world. So why do so many Vietnamese people own motorbikes? As a Vietnamese person, here's my perspective. I was born into an ordinary family. When I was growing up, having a motorbike was completely normal. But owning a car felt like something much more distant. I think that was true for many Vietnamese families as well. In Vietnam, a brand new motorbike can cost anywhere from a few hundred to a few thousand US dollars. Meanwhile, a new car often costs tens of thousands of dollars. For many people, a motorbike is simply the most practical choice. It's relatively affordable, it's fuel efficient, and the maintenance costs are much lower as well. Right now, I'm in my hometown of Haiphong, and if you spend some time exploring the residential areas, you'll quickly notice something. There are narrow alleys everywhere. Some of them are so tight that getting a car through can be a challenge, not to mention finding enough space to turn around. But on a motorbike, none of that is really a problem. You can go almost anywhere. Personally, I think this is one of the biggest reasons motorbikes became so popular in Vietnam. Many of our cities were built and expanded long before cars became a common part of everyday life. And without anyone really planning it, motorbikes ended up being the perfect vehicle for the way our cities developed. One thing that foreigners may find interesting is that in Vietnam, motorbikes are used for almost everything. Going to work, going to school, going grocery shopping, transporting goods, delivering food. And for many people, a motorbike is even a tool they use to earn a living. Every time I go out, I see delivery drivers, street vendors, repair workers, and many other working people relying on their motorbikes to do their jobs. If motorbikes suddenly disappeared for just one day, I think daily life in Vietnam would be affected in a major way. As you can see, the streets are quite busy, and most of the traffic is made up of motorbikes. Even though this road is actually quite wide, traffic can still get congested very easily. Just look around. and you'll immediately understand how important motorbikes are in Vietnam. Many people assume that as incomes rise, people will eventually switch from motorbikes to cars. And to some extent, that's true. But I've noticed something quite interesting. Even families that already own a car still keep their motorbikes. The reason is actually pretty simple. For short trips or when traffic is heavy, a motorbike is often faster and more convenient. If I'm just going out to buy some food or travel a few kilometers within the city, I'd probably still choose my motorbike. Besides being able to move easily through narrow streets and alleys, motorbikes have another advantage that many foreigners quickly notice, and that's parking. In Vietnam, it's common to see long rows of motorbikes parked on sidewalks in front of shops, cafes, restaurants, and residential areas. In fact, sometimes it feels like there are almost as many motorbikes parked on the sidewalks as there are riding on the streets. This makes it very convenient for people to stop and grab something to eat, buy a few things, or take care of a quick errand without having to look for a large parking lot. A relatively small space can accommodate dozens of motorbikes. Of course, this can sometimes create challenges for pedestrians, but it also shows how motorbikes have adapted to the way Vietnamese cities have functioned for many years. Actually, today is Sunday, so traffic is lighter than normal. If this were a weekday, there would be motorbikes everywhere. People heading to work, students going to school, delivery drivers, street vendors. You'd see a constant flow of motorbikes moving through the city. To be honest, what you're seeing today is probably a calmer version of everyday life in Vietnam. Right now, I'm waiting at a red light at an intersection. Looking around, you can see dozens or even hundreds of motorbikes waiting for the traffic signal. To many foreigners, this scene probably looks a bit chaotic. Motorbikes are everywhere. People are standing very close to one another. And when the light turns green, the whole flow of traffic seems to move forward at once. But for those of us who live here, it's a very familiar sight. In reality, most people are still waiting for the red light, staying in their lanes, and giving way to one another in their own way. It may not look as orderly as traffic in some Western countries, but after spending my whole life here, I've come to see Vietnamese traffic as a kind of flow. At first glance, it may seem chaotic, but beneath that, there are unwritten rules and a level of coordination that most local people understand instinctively. Now I'm turning onto a smaller street. This area is more residential, and a lot of people live here. You might expect to see fewer motorbikes once you leave the main roads behind, but that's not really the case. Whether you're on a wide boulevard or in a densely populated neighborhood, motorbikes remain the most common form of transportation. Just look around. You'll see motorbikes parked in front of homes, outside small shops, and constantly moving through the streets. For many Vietnamese people, a motorbike is the default way to get around. Whether it's going to work, taking children to school, picking up food, or simply making a short trip around the neighborhood. And I think that's one of the reasons why, no matter where you go in Vietnam, you're likely to see motorbikes everywhere. After walking for a while, I decided to get back on my motorbike. I wanted to visit a place that's quite popular with local people here in Haiphong. It's the area beneath Hoang Van Thu Bridge, right along the river. This is one of the places where people often come to enjoy the breeze, relax, and escape the heat, especially in the late afternoon and evening. And sure enough, when I arrived, there were already a lot of people here. Some were taking a walk, some were chatting with friends. Families had brought their children out to play, and a few couples were simply sitting by the river, enjoying the view. But there was one thing I couldn't help noticing. Next to many of these people was a motorbike. They had ridden here, parked nearby, and then settled down to enjoy their time by the river. It made me realize that even in moments of relaxation like this, motorbikes are still part of everyday life in Vietnam. They're not just a way to get from one place to another. They're often what connects people to the places where they spend their free time as well. I think the final reason has less to do with economics or infrastructure, and more to do with habit. Many Vietnamese people grow up with motorbikes as part of their lives. It's often the first vehicle they learn to ride. It's what takes them to school, to work, and helps them explore the world around them. For many people, a motorbike is more than just a means of transportation. It's simply a part of everyday life. When foreigners see thousands of motorbikes filling the streets of Vietnam, their first impression is often that everything looks chaotic. But to us, it's just normal life. Motorbikes aren't popular simply because they're cheaper than cars. They've become an essential part of how Vietnamese people live, work, and move from place to place. And after riding a motorbike for most of my life, I believe that's the reason they continue to play such an important role in Vietnam today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.